Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome to the show. Dennis Romero joining us live. Dennis, are you there?
I am here.
I don't see you.
You don't see me? There we go.
Welcome to the show. Hi, Dennis. Great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today. Always a pleasure to see you and to get to know the work you do and to find out more about SMP. And people say, what's Vanguard SMP? Why don't you tell them and give us a little introduction? Thank you.
So I am Dennis, and I represent Vanguard SMP. And SMP is a hair loss treatment that resolves most forms of hair loss via a cosmetic tattoo that is undetectable.
And you've been doing this for how many years now?
I've been doing this for almost 8, I think. Yeah, it's been quite some time. It's only been around for 10 or 11 or maybe 12. So yeah, it's still fairly new.
And where on the parts of the body are we doing this? What are we gearing towards?
So it has to do with hair loss, and basically what it does is it simulates hair follicles to the ones you already have on your head in order to conceal the thinning or the balding or, the severity of the loss.
Got it. Well, I love the fact that, you're very experienced. Let's tell about all your office locations just to point out, where are they located?
Yeah, so we have offices in Tampa, Orlando, Silver Springs, Maryland, Vegas, and Los Gatos, California.
Beautiful.
So, yeah. We're everywhere, it seems.
All right. Well, today, obviously, we're talking scalp micropigmentation, which is a form of cosmetic tattooing in a sense that, as you mentioned, is helping alleviate the look of hair loss for so many men and women. I'm sure there's a lot of misconceptions about this, so I would love for you to kind of break some of those down for us today for our listeners.
I think the primary misconception is that it's going to look like a flat helmet on your head and that it's going to, be botched because so many people don't know that it's already been developed as far as it has been, and it's almost foolproof if you know what you're doing as a technician. So I think the misconception is just people haven't heard of it, they're unaware of it, they don't know how it would fit for them or like how it would suit them, and so they shy away from moving forward or even investigating because if you can't picture it in your head, you have a very hard time bridging that gap from people's doubts to actually booking, to move forward with you. So I think that's the primary misconception. But like what I would say to them is do your due diligence on who you choose in terms of a technician and the company you go with, right? Because that will mitigate a lot of the risk that you could have to confront if you are price shopping too hard. That's a major misconception, just because, people don't know and you don't know what you don't know. So yeah, basically I would just tell them to investigate, to do their due diligence, and make sure that they're getting, a quality service, which is a luxury service, obviously, from someone in the field who can actually execute in the way that they want.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. And just while we're on it, people also might say, well, this is new to me. I'm not really aware. I heard there's other options. I know there's the hair transplants, there's surgeries. There's also, people can put on, I'll call them wigs, right? Or fake hair in a sense.
Yeah.
But, there's benefits and drawbacks to each and everything you choose. And what also I want to bring up is the fact that a lot of people come to you after the fact, after they've tried that as well. And that's something
Correct.
else that SMP helps with the scarring rejuvenation or camouflaging, I should say, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, those are really the only options that we have currently, like to date, right? You either wear a hair system or a wig. You either get a transplant or the SMP. The people come to me because they normally, with the wigs, they tap out because they're still dealing with all the anxiety of, is it sitting on my head right? Like there's this deep insecurity of not wanting to look, silly in public or for whoever, like your friends or family, because it's affecting their identity. It's affecting their self-esteem. And so, yeah, I think that the hair, they come to me because they just get tired of the constant process of having to apply a wig and having it glued to their head because it's glued to the top of your head for 30 days. So it's kind of gnarly in there. You're sweating. There's heat. We're in Florida. I'm in Florida. So it's not practical. And most guys give up for that reason. In terms of the transplant, there's nothing guaranteed in a transplant because there's a lot of variables, right? One, all of the follicles that are transplanted from the back to the front don't always survive the transplant, right? You lose about 30% of those follicles anyway. And 9 out of 10 times, our hair loss is progressive. And you only have so much hair in the back and sides that they can pull from to bring to the front. And once you've exceeded the donor hair, it's a wrap because you're still going to feel bald up top. And in addition to that, you're going to have scarring. So people usually make their way to me or to another SMP technician when they realize that they want something that is low maintenance, that looks good, never goes out of style. And, they could just rock out for as long as they want,
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. And what about, different cultural perspectives of this? Could we talk a little bit about that? And then we'll get into some trends and innovations.
Yeah. So basically, I think from a cultural perspective, we all know what our hair means to us, right? Like especially we live in a kind of celebrity driven culture, right? Where we click on things and we want to like emulate what we see on social media and on TV. And so for that reason, it does have an effect on people pretty deeply. Like for men, it's a symbol of masculinity, right? And it's a symbol of youth, basically, right? And so when you don't have that anymore, it's inevitable that it's going to affect you in some way. There's a spectrum. It doesn't affect everyone the same way, right? Some people are more like, meh, I lost my hair. Well, let's keep going. But those are mostly the men, right? And then you have the people that don't want to deal with it either because it happened too early and they felt a certain type of way about it and they want to deal with it. But that's what I think. And then for women, it's a symbol of femininity, right? It's a symbol of femininity,
Sure
and and it's also just a symbol of youth and health and vibrance and vitality. And people want to be able to project that onto the world and feel good and confident about who they are and their self-esteem. So, we like to help people even if it's on the margins.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And let's talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, what's happening in your line of work. Is there any new innovations, any trends?
So I think that this type of thing, like the innovations come incrementally, right? You're just improving on the margins, right? Each artist has their own way of doing things, right? You might just do like uniform, perfect little dots. Some people use like little flicks of the wrist in order to create more texture and realism. And so I think right now we're at the stage where everybody's just fine tuning the last bits that need to be figured out in order for it to be standardized and a no-brainer for a technician that knows what they're doing. I think that's basically it. It basically falls down. It comes down to the artist because we all do it differently. It's the same, but it's different, right? I, for example, like to juxtapose little flicks, little dots, and little lines, right? Because again, I'm testing it. I want to make it better. I'm pushing the boundary for myself and hopefully for other technicians that can benefit from that experimentation, from that improvisation. And I think that's the way that it's going to improve. It's going to improve in the margins because we already have like the basics down, right? It's not rocket science, right? It's not rocket science. I'm using a machine to create like the illusion of hair. And while that is difficult, it can be done effectively and consistently.
Beautifully said. Thanks for sharing. Also, by the way, just want to point out Dennis Romero, founder of Vanguard SMP, hailing today from, are you in Orlando or?
Yes, Orlando.
Beautiful. Obviously, multiple locations, and he's really giving us an insight, an intake, and an overview of, this work that he has been so passionate about. And, I know you realize many other people out there do this. I just want to make sure, the people they're going to are licensed, they are professional, they have the experience. That's one of the things. I know you also do your own training at your facility too. But can you just share a little bit about that? Because someone may be hesitant to go to someone in their neighborhood, if they're in a different state. So what would you say to them about what should they be looking for in someone like yourself who's doing this?
Okay, great. I think, first of all, they should be looking at the portfolio, the body of work, right? That it's diverse and that the person has experience dealing with many types of skin. The longer you're out there, the more you're confronted with the individual case of each person and realizing that it has to be tailored to the individual, right? Because every case is different. 2 scars might walk in, but one might be much more severe in the way that it looks and in its appearance, and one might be like a lot more simple to camouflage, right? So basically, pay attention to the artist and their portfolio and aligns closely to how you see your outcome, panning out. right? That they've executed treatments. And I think that's important. I think just getting on the phone with them and talking to them and seeing how you feel about them, right? Feel them out, because this is going to be a permanent thing, or at least a semi-permanent thing that's going to affect how you feel and how you look to other people. So your due diligence in taking your time to finding the right technician and the right company is paramount. It's one of the most important things. And that's what I would advise them, to be sure and to do their research and to compare and contrast clinics that are on the same level, which means they have technicians that are executing treatments that are professional, so that they can compare apples to apples, right? And not compare someone doing out of, their grandma's basement, as I often say, to a professional in a clinic. Not that grandma's house would not work if you know what you're doing, but chances are you're going to be better off with an establishment that has a good reputation, good Google reviews, whose technicians you have a good vibe with, and whose portfolio you absolutely love and want to have that done for yourself.
Beautiful. And part of that all comes down to also client education to find somebody who's well qualified. Do you want to elaborate on the client education side of things as well?
Yeah, because that's like one of the things that I said, get on the phone with them, right? Yeah. Because you're going to want to hear how they communicate, especially if they're going to be teaching you, right? You want to kind of get a feel about of their communication style, right? Everybody's different, and I think it's important for anybody teaching anything to have good communication skills and to be varied in the way that they communicate, right? I'm a chameleon, so I can animate my personality in many different directions. If I'm dealing with someone that is more urban, then I can do that, right? Because I've been in those spaces. If it's someone who is, like upper middle class or, highly educated, I've had professors, I try to just mold myself to fit the client, because I'm trying to close a sale at the end of the day, right? And while I am chameleonizing myself, those are still all authentic parts of my personality.
I love a chameleon says. I love how you say that. It's true. Great terminology there. What about some business insights for those out there here, of course, in this field?
Right. So what I say to students when they're trying to break in is to make sure that they make use of all of their talent, right? Like, for example, I just gave you an example of me being chameleon, right? That's not necessarily associated to business, but it actually absolutely can be, right? Because if I can mirror what each client wants from me and give it back to them, the chance of me closing that sale are much, much higher, right? All the time, I'm told by clients and students, I chose you because of what you said, because of how you express the process or how you explain things, right? They get a feel for you. And if it's a fit, then that's fantastic, right? But just make sure to use all of your talents, even ones that you may not think apply to business. They normally do in some form or fashion, even if you have to tweak them. And and also the meat and potatoes of the business, which is marketing, right? And sales. So I think that people who are trying to get into this should research, like, what is a good sales process? Talk to people that are already in the business so that they can kind of help you out with, what you need to do and what would expedite being successful for you. Because you need to have that information, because people feel really lost, especially when they've never owned a business. They don't come from a family that owned a business. They've kind of just worked a 9 to 5, and they're trying to transition to a cosmetic service that depends very heavily on how good your salesmanship is. So there's a lot of moving parts. And then again, that's why I emphasize you should look for a technician that checks off as many boxes as possible so that you mitigate the risk and the fear and the anxiety that you have of potentially being botched.
Got it. Ooh, gosh, that show drives me insane. It's addicting to watch how people unfortunately get hurt in, plastic surgery or anything like this, right? I mean, getting botched in a sense, or having a procedure done, maybe not by someone who's licensed or someone that is licensed that made a mistake, or it's their own body that gave way. I mean, that show is just, it gets to me. But I love that, the joy in trying to help someone get that fixed. But we're going to try our best to minimize all of that, obviously, with our licensed trained professionals like yourself. But I'm sure you have a lot of people that come in. Can I say the word botched in a sense? Have you had people with same SMP done, but just not the right way? Or can you share one of those stories or two since we're on the topic?
Yeah. I get that all the time. Because once they've been botched, usually because they were price shopping too hard, they then do their due diligence to find a person who can fix it, which is, I feel, what they should have done from the beginning, right? Because it's, they take a double hit, essentially, right? I've been botched and now I have to find a way to fix it. And so I see it all the time. It's quite common. Usually it is because someone doesn't have the necessary experience and hasn't developed the necessary hand speed or technique to, finish off a treatment in a very polished, refined way. So yeah, that's basically what I think. I think that people usually just they just price shop too hard, And I understand everybody wants to get the best deal possible, but at the end of the day, when you're dealing with something that's going to be visible to the outside and feel about it,
Yeah.
I think that just that alone should be enough a reason and motivation to seek out, someone who's professional and someone who has experience in the industry. And there are plenty of people out there who are, but it's important also for the fact that not all states have regulation. Like Florida, there's no regulation. It's the wild, wild west. If you come down here, right, and you want to get SMP done, do your due diligence, because actually most states have very little regulation in terms of who can perform scalp micropigmentation on live skin on clients. Wow. And so if you don't know that, most people are under the assumption, there must be some regulatory body that makes sure that these people have the necessary credentials. That does not exist in most states. And so that falls, that weight and that responsibility falls on the shoulders of the client, of the potential client. And so that is what I tell them. When somebody comes see me, I say, don't speak to me. Go speak to this person, go speak to that person, whoever you want to. So you can make an educated decision on what fits best for you, on who fits best for you, and who you want to deal with, going through the process of the treatment.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that. Makes so much sense. All right. Also, what about, where are you going? Do we want to talk about the future yet, or we still have more stuff to talk about? I just don't want to jump the gun, but there's still a lot to your, your work that I know you want to share.
I think that the future just, because we only have those three methods of concealing hair loss, I think they will all continue to improve. And again, I will touch on SMP about it incrementally and, around the margins improving as a viable option for people who are suffering from hair loss. I don't see the cloning of hair follicles so that we have endless follicles to reposition in the front of our heads being on the horizon anytime soon. So I think that the future, I think wigs have gotten really good, but you have to manage them really heavily because your hair grows out and it looks funky. Again, the transplant is very, very risky because the outcomes are so unpredictable from person to person. And SMP, I think, will also continue to improve around the margins. It's already at a place where it's a completely professional service. And if you do your due diligence and seek out the right technician, you really have very little to worry about in terms of being botched. So I think all around, the hair loss industry will continue to improve and make tweaks so that it's better. But at the moment, it's my opinion that scalp micropigmentation is the person's safe bet, because they avoid the risk of a botched surgery, and they avoid the risk of having to wear wigs that create so much anxiety on the person because they can shift and move. And so I think there will be overall, and I think that SMP is something that any person who's listening to this and suffering from hair loss should investigate thoroughly.
Beautiful. And let's talk about the process of when you do, you come in for the consultation, by the way, and you assess their head. Let's just say it's a man who, has full hair loss and you want to start. Tell us a little bit about the process of what it's going to feel like, how many treatments, and what's the type of upkeep do you recommend on that?
Okay, yeah, so the process is basically based on how we determine the severity of the hair loss is based on a scale that was created for the transplant industry, right? The Norwood scale is what it's called. It's the different levels of hair loss, primarily for men, the different stages as it makes its way back. And once we've determined what that is, then you can get a price point from us, right? From there, you get on our books and you come in. We discuss the hairline shape that you sort of envision yourself having, right? I always recommend that the person go with the most natural shape based on their facial features. But some people push the boundary of that, right? Like some men they've been in barber culture their whole lives, right? Usually Latino, Black men. And so with certain shapes can still look good because it's almost like our eye is accustomed to seeing that on them. You know what I mean? So, but again, you want to make sure that the person can deliver whatever type of hairline you want so that you end up in a happy place. Like I said, I always recommend the most natural. From then we go to the sessions, right? I draw in your hairline. And then we look at it, we tweak it to make sure that it's just what you want. And then we begin to apply the pigmentation in layers that come through sessions that then give you the necessary density to match the necessary depth of tone in terms of color that's left behind on the sides and the back, and in also the density. So you don't want to give someone who has very sparse hair and fine hair something that is too coarse on the top, because it's going to contrast too hard, right? It's going to contrast too severely. So you have to learn to observe what's on the client and how you're going to go about it in a way that gives them the most natural finish that is authentic to their own natural hair follicle, skin color, and their facial features. So you have to take all of that into account because it matters.
Absolutely does. And what do you love most about working with your clients? I mean, it's got to be that aha moment when like they're just like in awe of what you've done. Could you share one of those or two of those stories with us?
Yeah, absolutely. Because people are nervous, and so once they get past that first session, and I'm a good hand holder, I've told you this before. So once they get past that first session, they settle down immediately because they realize that they're not going to walk out and be gawked at, right? That's the main fear. And so, so I've had clients who give me a lot of anxiety, right? Because they're so nervous. And I don't want to disappoint them because I already recognize they're in a fragile state in terms of their self-image. And if you look at my Google reviews, you can read on how they felt once they were done, right? And most of them, I should say all of them so far, knock on wood, have been in a happy place, right? The transformation is really, really dramatic because you can have a guy that's in his 20s and is bald all the way back to the crown of the head, right? So if you restore that for him in a very realistic way, that he's going to be happy. And I can't think of one specific case because it's actually very common for them to be like, oh my God, thank you. You know what I mean? Thank you. And that's what's most rewarding. Because again, it is tedious work, right? And so that's why you also want to find someone who doesn't cut corners because they have to commit to what they're doing. If they try to cut corners, it's not going to be a good end result. I've had, Maria, for example, I had a client named Maria. She had lost almost the head. And she just wanted to do something for it, but she was almost at a place where she didn't have enough to camouflage in with the scalp micropigmentation. Yeah. So I was transparent. Told her, hey, listen, I can do the treatment for you, but it still might be detectable because I can't guarantee that, the wind's not going to blow in a particular way, that you're going to be at the beach, that you're going to be at a pool party, that you might sweat. Like, what I'm saying? There are all these other factors that might give it away.
Sure, yeah.
And so when I explained that to her, she wanted to move forward. And she says, I just want the option to be able to style my hair in a certain way and have it look better, right? And so she was super happy and she appreciated my transparency. And explaining to her the limitations that could exist because she didn't have enough. And then she met me halfway and said, I understand that. Thank you for telling me that. I still like to move forward because I'm going to style my hair in a way that helps with the camouflage that you're going to do. Right. So, and she still comes here. She bought me a mug the other day from Puerto Rico after her vacation.
Oh, look at that. Beautiful. See, you're making long lasting impressions and relationships with your clients is, what you do clearly with your reputation and with all your years of hard work and commitment to this craft and field. And, that's another thing, in the future, how often does someone come back for a touch up? Things fade over time, I'm assuming. Yeah. So,
semi-permanent tattoo, which is what a cosmetic tattoo is. That means it's just a much more superficial tattoo. It's not penetrating deep like body art. And for that reason, it's going to have a lighting. It's going to lighten, right, over the course of 2 to 4 years. And whether you're closer to the 2 or closer to the 4 depends on the specifics of that person's skin, how oily, how dry, how active they are, sun exposure, and their metabolism itself, right? That's what changes. That's the discrepancy and why some people have to come back sooner, 2 years, as opposed to later, 4 years. Those are the factors that determine, if you bake in the sun, it's going to lighten. Oh, yeah. If you have a hyperactive, athletic life because you're an athlete, it might lighten a little bit sooner. Again, because it's superficial, and anything that is like sweat, for example, that is pushing outward may have a lightening effect, right? So you have to be mindful after the treatment to not engage in activities that are going to, affect the treatment if what you want is to be closer to the 4 years, right? And once closer to the 4 years, once you're ready to come in for a touch-up, also understand that the price is usually somewhere around 25 to a third of the overall initial cost. So you don't have to fork money that you did initially, right? Because you're just coming back for one session that's going to give it that initial pop that you loved.
Got it. Thank you so much. All right. And how did you want to leave off to your listeners?
Say again?
How would you like to leave off with your listeners today?
Yes. So my main advice to listeners is that they look for someone who's professional, to open their mind, that this is actually a real viable professional luxury service that can leave you in a far better place, in regards to your hair loss, and to just pull the trigger, be in a better place in terms of your self-image.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much. And if we want to reach out to you directly, would you mind sharing how we do so?
Absolutely. You guys can reach out to us through our website, www.vanguardsmp.com, and Vanguard SMP across all social platforms.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Dennis. Always a pleasure having you here. Great seeing you, and good luck. I mean, wow. I don't know how you keep it up and all these businesses, but it keeps growing and growing, and you also are training people to do this too, right?
Correct. Because I want there to be technicians out there that fill the market and have the necessary skill set to not give the industry a bad reputation.
Perfect. Thanks so much. You have a fantastic day. And to all of our listeners and viewers, stay tuned. We'll be right back with more. Bye-bye, Dennis. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.